welcome back to the Evangelical Anglican. Today, I am excited to have Caleb Waite, the Director of Content for Sola Media, here to talk about the one thing that no one has talked about enough, which is the filmography, but even more importantly, perhaps the theology of Christopher Nolan's movies. So, Caleb, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Jared. And yeah, not enough people are talking about this right now for some reason. So, I mean,
I just
might as
felt
well.
like it's a huge, it's the great silence. No one is talking about this one thing,
Yeah,
and somebody, and here at the Evangelical Anglican, we talk about the things that no one wants to talk about,
right.
such as the Odyssey
You're right. You're
by
right.
Christopher
Finally.
Nolan. Now, you and I kind of got into it in a friendly way, on our differing takes on. So, for one, this is not a debate podcast. This we're not going to be. This is not like Jay Dyer yelling at people. um,
I mean, it
uh,
could be. We'll see how this goes.
yeah, actually, I mean, so you're in California. I'm in Georgia. It's 11 o'clock here. It's 4 in the afternoon for you. So I might end up yelling at the end of our conversation. But
Yeah.
um, we had talked a little bit about Nolan. I do think, uh, as critical as I am of him, and I said this on my solo podcast I did. I think Nolan is the biggest director in the world right now.
Hmm.
Now I'm sure there's some Bollywood guy that's you know
Sure.
way bigger, but
Yeah.
um, in the sense of what I've noticed is there is no other director who, when he puts out a movie, uh, the whole world stops and takes note. It feels like Steven Spielberg at this point in his career, if he puts out a movie, everyone's like, oh,
Mm.
interesting. But
Yeah.
when Nolan puts out a movie, I mean, Quentin Tarantino's close, but he's still kind of niche.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not quite mainstream as mainstream as Nolan is. I
Yeah.
mean, he's
Yeah.
mainstream, but there's just something different about when Christopher Nolan's coming out in the movie. We've been talking about the Odyssey for a year and a half, it feels like.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think that
Hmm.
there is something about him that's really important, for people to think through and he's an interesting director. So you did a talk
Hmm.
recently on the theology of Christopher Nolan.
That's right.
And so, and you talked a lot about his kind of context or location within modernity, postmodernity.
Yeah. 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 I think it's important for casual viewers to, I mean, there's ways to talk about his filmography and work, and it can you can just sound like a stereotypical millennial, quote unquote Nolan bro who, and I was in high school when The Dark Knight came out. I saw the opening midnight showing that does leave a lasting impression. One of the last
Absolutely.
cultural texts that is shared. I talk about this often with friends with the dissemination and the ubiquitous nature of social media, and especially algorithmic driven platforms. There's less and less shared cultural texts that are in common, because what your echo chamber on your feed is all talking about, no one else is. And so, my nephews and nieces, it's like their reference for shared cultural texts, they don't have as many as we do. Like The Dark Knight was this big thing, and Inception 2 and others that came out. And I think younger generations, the closest thing they might have is like a Mr. Beast. It's just not the same. The movies, TV shows, prime time, whatever it is, it's all fractured and fragmented. And and Nolan is one of the last directors to make films that are popular, but just thoughtful enough and smart enough and with enough twists and surprises to check the boxes of mass market audiences as well as those who like to contemplate and have a podcast about it
Yeah.
or so it's like if you the next few levels above him or not above but like deeper into like the cinephile world would be a Tarantino and a few others and or then real niche and indie but therefore you're right, his films are events, they're things to talk about, they carry weight and a gravitas about them of and he's one of the last serious artists to have that kind of cultural impact. And I think that feels good again to actually talk about, to actually have a shared text to argue about and to get
Yeah.
riled up because all the other stuff that we do that with is so, again, fragmented to our niche algorithm
Yeah.
parties and mutuals online. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's also making movies, um and I think somebody like Quentin Tarantino is probably passionate about this too, but um Nolan's also making movies for theaters. I mean, he really wants to, which is part of what makes it a common cultural shared text, is because everyone sees it in community, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think a lot of movies today, when they come, I mean, I'm a dad of 6 kids, and they're all young, and I don't have time to go to a movie almost ever.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I saw, Despicable Me 4, and which is fantastic. Both of the new Super Mario Brothers movies.
Yeah. Of course.
That's my movie going experience now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always like matinees and just a bunch of dads in there, like me, napping through the whole thing. Um,
Yeah.
but but most of the time when a movie's coming out, I think, well, I'll just wait a couple months and it'll come out on Netflix or streaming or, something, and I'll just watch it on the phone. And most of the time, you feel like, um, you kinda get the movie. Like, you can judge the movie, you can look at the movie, you can kinda enjoy it. Watching on your phone, to me, is not that detrimental of an experience. But Nolan movies are different. They feel like you have to go see it. It's like a stage performance almost. Like, you have to actually go, and then there's even a push towards, like, I wanna go see it in IMAX, I wanna go see it in 70 millimeter. Um, and I think that's actually really important, not only for the future, like, the film industry, but, um, I think there's something that it reminds me of growing up before phones, of, like, yeah, you went to go see a movie. You went to midnight, I mean, I went to the midnight showings of all 3 of the Lord of the Rings movies when I was in high school, and I went to the midnight showings of the prequel Star Wars movies,
Yeah.
and it's some of the coolest experiences I've ever had because it was just so
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and he really is trying to make movies that exist in a theater,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know of anyone else that's really trying to do that right now.
Yeah. It's definitely and that's why he's films are hard to make. They're not on a sound
Yeah,
stage. They're not like, we'll fix it in post or, I think there are a number of films now where they're like, we don't have this scene completely figured out yet. So we're going to shoot it in a number of different ways and then just figure it out later. And I mean, it's just not that. So there's a lot of just that tactile, um, way of doing things that is it comes across, it shows up on screen, people do appreciate it when they see it. Are they articulating that at home all the time while they're streaming things? Oh man, sometimes perhaps, but I just think folks kind of get in a lull and a kind of cultural lull, um, of kind of apathy of engagement with things, because everything is asynchronous and things are watched not together. And so yeah, it's unique, in ways that it reminds us of what has been, what was normal before,
Right.
more digital and social fragmentation. And then part of that also is, that means it's going to be a pretty big disruptive force in a fragmented, polarized world where hot takes and
Yeah.
all click merchants are abound, right? And so,
Right. Right.
yeah, it makes it interesting, like right now, very much in particular, especially because his last film came out in 2023, right before I think what some cultural commentators, well, it was around that time, some cultural commentators started to talk about, um, these kind of buzzword names, things like the vibe shift, metamodernism, this type of like this where folks were trying to see the zeitgeist in the culture, and we're noticing a number of um, trends where kind of the cynicism of the woke world, uh, was really losing its steam. People getting really sick of that heavily policing everything. If you look at, reviews of Barbie and Oppenheimer, some of the most critical reviews were from more progressive and um, uh, writers, really not criticizing the film as a film, those films as
Right.
films, but because they failed to represent and these demographics and people and voices, in these ways. So therefore, you're not allowed to enjoy the film. Not so it's people were starting to get sick of that, and then there were these host of films like Top Gun Maverick is the main one. Uh, I would encourage folks to go on YouTube and search Thomas Flight and watch his essay on why do movies feel so different now, which is where he starts to describe why Top Gun Maverick was such a phenomenon when it came out. It made it over $1 billion, and it was a completely sincere, earnest action film that you could describe as modernist. Modernist being, the opposite of postmodernist. Modernism would be the style of film that a lot of us could describe and know it when you see it, but it's a film that just lacks irony, is completely sincere. You have, American soldiers on the beach, shirtless, blaring music with American flags waving, and
Right.
we're going to go beat the bad guys, the Russians. And guess what? There's no twist at the end in which America is the secret bad guy all along, and
Right.
all this other stuff. People, that is a kind of modernist film where the values are not, subverted and winked at in a strange way. They're clearly communicated, and without some kind of agenda. And anyway,
Yeah, I heard somebody say that Top Gun Maverick was the last film of the 20th century.
yeah, I think that's
It's like,
a great way to
even though
put it.
came out in, I think Miles Smith might have said that, but yeah, it felt like Top Gun. You
Yeah,
know,
and I
uh,
feel like some of when people heard that Nolan was making the Odyssey after Oppenheimer, I think there was a sense that people are kind of in this wave of like, look, there's a vibe shift. People are getting sick of cynicism. They're sick of postmodernism, this self reflection. and a constant introspective, um, cynical doubt of who we are, who our heritage is, the narratives around um, culture and religion. People are sick of that cynicism, and so maybe Nolan going back to the Odyssey, to this kind of almost sacred text of the Western canon, is going to be picking up on like this myth in a in a sincere, earnest way, to let Homer speak for you know, himself, to go after these values of the return of a noble king to his home, and vanquish the you know, the those
Yeah.
leeches, the suitors, and all this stuff. And I feel like there was kind of an expectation or hope that Nolan would be part of this vibe shift, knowing that he's not going to make a Top Gun Maverick type film or something like that, but hoping that he would be reaching back to these myths to find a North Star to break out of the cynicism that we've been so accustomed to and we're kind of so sick of. And then I think as the Odyssey has come out, a lot of the responses and reaction has been, oh, this seems like more of the same. He seems to be subverting Odysseus. This seems to be more postmodernism. It's not as bad as it could be, but it's disappointing in all these ways. Personally,
Mhm.
I have a piece that I've written. It's being edited now. I'm arguing with that review of the Odyssey. I'm trying to say that that's not the best read on what Nolan is doing. Um, my short, my short take is I don't think Nolan in the Odyssey is subverting Homer, and because if he was, I think you would you would have a cynical subversion and deconstruction of kind of outer public um, civics and the law, but that's not what Nolan does. Nolan in the Odyssey, uh, there's a lot of things going on, but what remains salient at the end of the film, and the thing that needs to be recovered, is the public observance of the law of these cultures. And I think that, I mean, that was huge and central in Homer in the Bronze Age. And it was later Greek philosophers who, when they subverted and critiqued and deconstructed Homer, um, they went after his depiction of very passionate gods who were shameful, but they also went after, the focus of, the hero better obey the public order and these laws, and
Yeah.
if he transgresses those things, he's going to pay. He's going to hurt everyone around him, and he's going to pay the consequences. And so it was the later Greek philosophers who that was their critique of Homer. And I think if you're going to subvert the Odyssey, you would go there, but that's not what Nolan does. So I don't think he is cynically deconstructing Homer and the Odyssey. It doesn't mean, everyone should love the film and it's a great masterpiece in its own right. But anyway, that's my take and read on things. That's kind of just
Sure.
the place of which the Odyssey.
Well, I think we're in a cultural moment when everybody's trying to get clicks and everybody's trying to have takes. I mean, look what we're doing. I mean, we're and I felt like a lot of the critiques about the Odyssey were pretty ill-founded. I think there was some like, um, you know, unless there was some kind of master manipulative marketing scheme, you know, I think some of the early shots that came out is like, I don't know if I would put those shots out. I thought things like the Trojan costumes, whatever you call them, look
Mm,
terrible. Now in the film, they perform a role of kind of a classic white hat, black hat.
mm,
You know, all of the Trojans are wearing white, and at the end, you realize like the whole point is kind of this purity is being destroyed, right? And so
mhm.
it makes, and then all of the Greeks are in black. Um,
Yeah,
of course, Agamemnon being the
yeah.
central figure of that. So in the movie, it made more sense. The picture when it comes out, 8 months ago, and you are wondering, is it going to be more cynical, you know,
Mm,
stuff? You're kind of like, oh no, like this is gonna, and that's whatever. This is gonna be bad, isn't it? This is gonna be bad. So
mm,
then I think when the movie comes out, I think that a lot of the critiques are pretty ill-founded. Um, I think it's kind of the politics of the movie. Nolan has a right to um, make the movie and do his own spin. Any of my issue with it actually was trying to be more internal to the movie itself. Does the movie actually make its own point that it's trying to make? But let back upping backing backing back it back upping a little bit,
mhm.
backing up a little bit. If I were to take Nolan's career, I mean, we're in the middle of it. Um, and I mean, I'm not like a study of film guy or like a history of film guy, but from my vantage point of somebody who's kind of grown up at the same time as a lot of his movies, I would kinda break his career into kind of 3 right now, 3 moments of, like, there's early Nolan, um, which goes up to The Dark Knight. I mean, I would say The Dark Knight is when he starts to take on, um The Dark Knight is the beginning of kind of this ascendancy of Nolan as a
Sure.
heavy hitter,
Yeah,
you know? And
definitely.
the 2000 teens are
Mhm,
kind of like Nolan's rise. And then ever since he goes to Universal,
mhm.
yeah, the last 2 movies have felt
Yeah,
like, um I mean, Tenet was kind of no one I didn't watch Tenet. I don't know if it, it because it came out during COVID and all that, but something has changed in the last 2 movies that feels like he's at another level of what he's trying to do. Um, and so I would say this is kind of the him as I mean, who knows? You can't really say in the middle of a career if somebody is the mature Nolan
mhm.
or not, but, um, I think there is a big contrast between Nolan's films and his early filmography, now, of course, with anybody, and the rise of Nolan. One of my criticisms of him has been, I think he, to me, um, kinda becomes obsessed with himself in, a little bit. And what I mean by that is, as these movies from The Dark Knight, um, to me, the high point was, Dunkirk, but Oppenheimer and Odyssey are also part of this. Is everything just kind of becomes this Nolanized Nolan thing, and it's like and I'm not saying, every director has their little things that I mean, that's part of why
Sure.
you go see them is like, I
Yeah,
want to see
they have a
a
calling card.
Tarantino movie. I want to see, a lens flare if I'm in a Abrams movie, like these are things we expect to see. Um, I wanna see doves if I'm in a John Woo movie, like, they're gonna be doves, anyways, I think Nolan kinda it becomes more and more, he just starts to insert himself into the movies more and more. I thought, uh, Dunkirk to me is the best example of this because that is such a easy and complete and good story to tell. That I think early Nolan would have just told it straight, right? Just told it like movies like Batman Begins. Um, I really like Insomnia. I mean, Memento's a weird one. I mean, that's kind of that's
His first big
I'll
film.
grant that one. Um, but Insomnia is kind of a straight movie. Like it's there's not weird like a lot of weird
Yeah. Yeah.
twists or turns.
Yeah.
So it feels like he starts to kind of insert himself more. Dunkirk to me, I just felt. I mean, I need to go back and watch it because a lot of people really liked it. I came away not liking it because I just felt like he couldn't get out of the way and just let the story tell itself because it's such an amazing story. Um, and he just had to Nolanize it. He had to put himself in it constantly. And I just thought, dude, get out of the way and let me enjoy one of the greatest stories that's ever been told. I mean, this
Yeah.
whole miraculous,
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. 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 I think that I can see what you're saying there. I don't have a d- definitive defense or agreement with what you're after. I think his first film that he made with friends on the weekends is called Following. I've actually never seen it. I think it came out in 96, 97. They made it on the weekends over like a year, and it came out, and I think that I would say those earlier films, Following, Memento, Insomnia, The Prestige, um, um, I would say that Nolan is at his youngest. Batman Begins is different. Like that's his big like break in the sense of like, okay, we're actually going to give you a budget, and we're with like
Right.
big. This is a huge story, etc. So I'm not. I would say that those films, even though I think the Prestige was after the first Batman, but those films I see him being his most cynical and his most dour in like the endings of the films. Just if it's um, to put it that way, a lot of folks have um, noted that the hermeneutics of suspicion are at play in his work. So that's a term coined by Paul Ricoeur to identify kind of what Freud, Marx, and Nietzsche are doing. This, things are not as they seem.
Right.
Anyone, a pastor, right? You're a pastor, and the sincere interpretation of you being a pastor is that you want to preach God's word and administer the sacraments and do, ordinary means of grace ministry
Right.
for the people of God and the building up of the church. But actually, what you're really after is some kind of, victim mentality, will to power, or some kind of like weird father mom complex, i.e.,
Right. Right.
Freud stuff, or you just want, to keep people pacified with religion and make money via Marx. So anyway, so that's the hermeneutics of suspicion, and Nolan seems to his characters aren't you know those they're not Marx and Freud, but they are constantly saying are things as they seem, because normally the characters you meet in those films, they stab the protagonist in the back, or the sage that is supposed to like help them and mentor them ends up betraying them, or it's like the texts and the totems and the mementos that they have, you think those are objective reality, or you think your memory gives you some kind of objective understanding and bearing of who you are in the narrative you're in, but all of that comes under suspicion and doubt
Mhm.
in his films. That's broadened to kind of all of society via the Batman films, even in Interstellar. If you think of like science and the laws of physics and all that, but I would say like some of those earlier films, the endings are kind of like this dour sense of humanity is going to be endlessly suspicious of one another. And in that sense, it seems like some of his films have become a little more optimistic since then, maybe as he's gotten older and had kids and they've been raised or well, also a lot of his films he wrote with his brother. And the last film he wrote with his brother was Interstellar, I think. And I think his brother is probably even a little more cynical than he is in the way he writes his characters. But now, after Interstellar, Nolan's been, I think, the predominant writer. And anyway, I'm not disagreeing, but I suppose I think he's had a lot of cynicism in the past. He isn't completely outside of the hermeneutics of suspicion and the kind of postmodern kind of self-reflection, but it seems to me that he's like sincerely searching for there has to be some kind of break and a way out. And I think what's fascinating, like the films where like violence is the problem, Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, and the Odyssey, like human violence, the pattern of mimetic rivalry where people are constantly um, miming after each other after
Yeah, explain that a little bit. I
yeah
mean,
so that yeah the Rene Girard is a philosopher, I think in 99 or 2000 um came out with the book I See Satan Fall Like Lightning. Rene Girard is a philosopher, and he's trying to bring his insights into mimetic social theory, which is a theory that uh, trying to explain a lot of our sociological dynamics with in the terms of mimesis and mimicking one another. And we do that with parents and children and modeling behavior and what have you. But what mimetic theory says is people don't only do that in those ways. What we end up having mimetic desire. You know, you didn't care about, you didn't want a Ferrari or a Porsche one day until your neighbor had one.
yeah,
And suddenly there's this kind of covetousness, jealousy factor of, and if it explains a lot of kind of like social status hierarchy, trying to climb the ladder, as it were, and eventually that falls into mimetic. When you have mimetic desire and a scarcity of resources in the world of which to achieve the desires you have, you can't, not everyone can get into the Ivy League. Not everyone can get the job and buy the car
right.
and all this stuff. Eventually that leads to mimetic rivalry and violence. And you see that in Nolan's films, like Bruce Wayne mimics the guy who killed his parents by becoming, you know, someone who criminals are afraid of, and he hunts after them. But
Sure.
who mimics Batman? It's the Joker. So it's like this endless, like, as long as you're doing this, you're going to have someone in the
Yeah.
opposite mimic you in a way that you won't expect. And the only way to break the cycle of violence is to have some kind of scapegoat. And in Girard's theory, the scapegoat has to be built on a lie. The scapegoat has to be innocent, even though they're blamed by the populace for whatever, and they're offered up as this kind of like scapegoat sacrifice, in which that is the thing that breaks the mimetic rivalry once and for all.
Right.
Otherwise, without it, the violence continues endlessly. And it seems like
I mean, this Gerard is describing I mean, he might not be trying to cast a judgment on it, but this is a bad thing, right? It's bad that we scapegoat people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Gerard expert, so I feel bad trying to parrot these ideas without no
Well,
knowing
forget
where
what
he's
Gerard
coming
says.
from.
I mean, you and I would say, and most people would say, I mean, if you use that term with somebody, you're scapegoating them. That's a bad thing to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think it's being described in these philosophical discussions as the unfortunate reality, as the only thing that will end this cycle. And
So it's a necessary thing.
I mean, I think they're not saying it, they're broadcasting. They're like, it is what it is. And n- anyway, I caveat that with saying, I'm not 100% sure all the folks takes. I mean, it seems Nolan is saying like, um for some reason it's captivating his imagination so much so that like when he is talking about the cycles of violence in his characters in the worlds of Gotham, and then in the Cold War United States with Oppenheimer, and now with Odysseus in Ithaca. It seems like, how can I imagine a way out of this endless cycle of violence? And it's fascinating to me that he seems captivated with this scapegoat um, answer, as like that is the one thing that seems to break something. Obviously, like I'm not saying this is for sure an echo of the Christian gospel and
Sure, no, yeah,
the atonement of Christ, but in some sense I do think it's fascinating that people can be captivated by this in a variety of ways, that like this idea is so so different from just the tit for tat and the way we're going about things now. Obviously, I mean, I think there can be it can be described as a unfortunate bad scapegoating thing, but the way it can be also talked about in reverence and respect through the stories of the gospels and the atonement, as some theorists do. It's just, my point is like it's captivating to Nolan, and that's
yeah.
interesting to me, of like when he thinks of violence, how do we stop that? And
Hmm.
he seems to always go back here. So
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if um, he also. I mean, I think one thing about Nolan, it's I've always just found it interesting is his movies. They kind of walk the edge of violence, but they're never. It's he as a person seems uncomfortable with violence. His movies always have I mean, they've always been PG-13 until recently. He started going into the R. I mean, the Memento. There were some R-rated movies early on, but his big ones when on his rise to huge director had violence, but it was always very understated. I even thought, I mean, one of my problems with the Odyssey is I felt like in order for him to make the point he was making um, with Odysseus uh, being the one to go and bring about this violence to end the 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 abuse of Zeus's law.
hmm
Um, there's this kind of Odysseus seems to from my gathering of the movie, Odysseus was kind of taking on like a David role of like my
hmm
hands are too bloody to build the temple, but my son can, right? Like so I'm gonna do this thing that has to be done, and then I'm gonna exile out. Um, and I just thought it was interesting that in this moment of like him admitting that this character does have to step into this violence, he also again as a director isn't comfortable with it, you know? And so he can't quite, I mean, I was sitting there going like, this scene would be better if Quentin Tarantino directed it, and it
Yeah, I
was
see what
just
you mean.
bloody, messy, and not that I wanna watch, like, but, like, it should be like the end of Django Unchained, where there's just blood everywhere, and he's just wreaked havoc, and, at the end of that movie when Django, I mean, he shoots a woman, he just kills everybody, and you just feel like there's this, it's him unchained. There's this force, this judgment.
Mhm,
It's not good, it's
mhm,
not bad, it's just judgment. He's just straight
mhm.
across the board. Everyone who's there is now caught up in it.
Yeah,
There are no, I thought when she shut the door on Mia Goth, when Anne
yeah,
Hathaway said, I
yeah,
thought she should have been throwing her out into, like, into like, wolves, you know?
sure.
Um, and so I just think it's interesting that Nolan can never quite, even when he has an R rating to work with, um, he seems uncomfortable with the type of violence that he wants to try to wrestle with on screen.
Yeah, 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 I see what you mean, and, there's probably a way to do that tasteful and in his tone and style. To get nerdy here, and I don't think he's aware of these things in the Bronze Age, perhaps, but I'll plug my mentor and my friend's book, Michael Horton, Shaman and
There you
Sage.
there you go.
Has nothing to do with Chris Nolan films, but the first half deals a lot with Homer and the Odyssey, and so some of the context to these things, which is fascinating. And he talks about Horton talks about how guilt then wasn't individualistic, and that's how some people criticize this film for being Odysseus is guilt ridden, full of regret at the consequences of the sack of Troy and his actions and stuff. And however, though that concept isn't there quite yet, there is a concept of social guilt, and uh, miasma, which is kind of a social contagion and disease that was in a city. So, you might not personally think much about, am I as an individual, is my soul going to be judged before the living God? No, 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 no. That's not a thing as much then. But there is a thing of, because of the actions of what I have done or what we have done, all of Homer's poems depict a social and public corporate consequence of miasma, of like there's now judgment from the gods on a city or an army, and the only way to appease that is through a scapegoat, which is interesting. And that was common in the Bronze Age, and the the ritual would be performed. Often an animal or a pig would be sacrificed as the scapegoat to cleanse, as the cleansing sacrifice for the curse that was over the city and the kingdom or the army. And anyway, I say that to as just a preamble of like, it seems like when Nolan read the Odyssey, there were certain parts that he really kind of maybe picked up on or honed in on, Odysseus weeping and crying like a bereaved um um bride, or like I forget what the term is, like just at the mention of Troy, he's crying, as in this he's crying all the time throughout the poem. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, as a director you probably read that and you're like, okay, well, that sticks with you. Are you ideologically then thinking, I'm like, I'm going to subvert this character to make this like modern guilt trip? I don't know, like I doubt it. Like I think he's just reading various things within the poem and he's saying like, what are the things that impress upon me and kind of fit in with my calling card of Nolan isms, and then he kind of leans into those things while giving like hints and nods at, yeah, my Agoth the handmaiden isn't Hun with the 11 others, but none of the other adaptions of the Odyssey on film depict that scene.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
he
I
does
don't know.
give he gives a nod to she's being outcast, thrown out there, even though she's not, being ravaged by wolves and stuff. But I feel like Nolan is picking up things in this expansive poem of which that fit his style and his interests. And I'm like, okay, I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
There choices that you or I would have done differently, perhaps, or what have you. And I do think like a Tarantino would read the Odyssey and be like, I'm going to lean into just the hunt for glory, like
right.
the hunger for a warrior's earthly renown and glory now. And he probably wouldn't lean into Odysseus weeping and crying all the time or what have you. So anyway, I just think that's just what happens though when you have this
Yeah,
poem that's just so massive
sure.
and nuanced and all this stuff. Like, when no matter what dir director receives it, they're gonna like they're gonna just pay attention to the stuff that resonates with them most. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the don't you think that in storytelling, you got the kind of the classic hero's journey, right? Hero starts in the known, everything is safe, but it is, it's pure, but it's fallible. It's pure, but it's about to be destroyed. Then there's a crisis. The hero is sent off on this journey to save that, and is helped along the way with, you mentioned the helper and all these things.
Mhm,
But central to like that kind of storytelling, it's always the hero ends the story home. Like he comes back. I feel like, and this is where I've said that I think Nolan is cynical, and you can push back and you can tell me why I'm wrong, but none of his movies end up with the hero home. Like for Nolan, you can't go home. Like you can never, and maybe it is part of that scapegoat. Like whoever his hero is the one to bear. Even like Interstellar, it ends with Matthew McConaughey. Um,
mhm,
he gets to that new home, but he leaves it. I mean, the last scene is him going like back into the ship to go back out into space to find, what like I
mhm,
if I
sure,
remember right, like I think it's and that was one of the things that stuck out to me in the Odysseys, because to me, all the changes you want to make, I love the idea of kind of exploring this kind of guilt,
mhm,
um, the idea that you've broken and it's kind of the Pandora's box of we have now broken this trust that and I thought it was interesting. I was rewatching the 2005 4 or 5 Troy movie, which is a kind of a mess, and it's got some good, I mean, some good performances, but overall it's not great. But um one of the things that stuck out to me was this kind of mutual, it depicts this kind of old style of combat of between this kind of mutual respect. And there's this scene where Hector kills, Achilles' cousin, uh, whatever his name is, and thinks it's Achilles, and everything stops. And Hector says, and then they realize it wasn't Achilles, it was his cousin. And he says, that's enough killing for the day. And they all just kind of go home. Now I know that's a movie, but I think it does depict like this kind of ancient, uh, mutual respect between warrior kind of thing that, when I was rewatching that, it made me think more of like, I love that idea that Nolan has of like, what does this actually do to the world when you give a gift and it is
Yeah.
not what it seems, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beware Greeks being bearing gifts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think that gets
but
at
I
to the Bronze Age concept of
yeah, yeah,
miasma.
absolutely.
Anyway, just
Um,
continue.
yeah, yeah. So I had no issue. I mean, people saying that
Yeah.
that was bad. I mean, look, directors again on a massive poem like that, they're gonna have their particular take. You can't do that. Was the funniest response was like, yeah, it should have just been 55 hours and just done the whole thing word for word, or whatever. Um, but I do feel like the one thing that has to happen in the Odyssey is Odysseus has to come home and he has to be home. He has to That's the whole point, right? It's like the journey home to rest. And that to me is a fundamental rest in storytelling, I think is um, something that I've noted personally is it's just a common thing. Like the old Western, it's always the town is beset by these invaders and the hero comes in and the town is back at rest. Now, a lot of times in those westerns, the hero can't join in the rest. The hero has to leave, So so there is something to that. But it
Mhm.
seems like with Nolan's movies,
Yeah.
the hero never gets to, you can never really go home. Like you
Yeah.
can never just,
Yeah.
um, and so I don't know. I don't know if there's something to that. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's part of my, yeah.
I see what I get that. And it's hard to know. He's as a good artist he doesn't put all his cards on the table. Um, he's not too sanctimonious in his like, this is the message I'm trying to preach to you exactly in a
I
didactic
mean, come
way.
on.
I
Sometimes he can be pretty sanctimonious.
I mean, I mean,
Do not
relative.
go gently into that dark night or what,
Yeah, I
like,
mean, the relative compare. I guess the biggest example would be like America Ferrera's speech in Barbie, where she's just like, "Women have it so hard," and it's like 5 minutes of like a monologue and a sermon, a real sermon. And anyway, and I enjoyed that film.
I never saw Barbie. I saw
It
Oppenheimer.
it's great. It's fun, but there's definitely like there's so many. I have a film directing 101 book, and like on page 1 it says, "Do not be sanctimonious, do not preach." And it's like what they tell you on day 1 of film school, and
Yeah,
so many directors ignore that advice.
yeah.
And anyway, so
So many
Nolan,
preachers ignore that advice too. Uh,
they, he has messages and he has themes, and I think it's very clear to me that he is making postmodernist kind of films that's just wrestling with postmodernism. That's my interpretation of where his characters are suspicious, they are betrayed, and things are not as they seem, and so they shouldn't have to question the prevailing n- narratives. And but they don't like. I think to me, like, cynicism would be like the other end of it, with the end of the character arc is when they're like, and you know what? Zeus's law sucks. And I'm going to burn it all down anyway. And I'm going to go make like my more idealistic utopia where I don't have to abide by any systems or laws. And we all live in whatever harmony. Like, I feel like that is closer to a more popular postmodern narrative. And it just seems like his films end with his characters gesturing towards, we know there's something more. We're
mm,
searching for it. And that's like the only thing we can say with sincerity is that there's some other transcendent thing out there. And we're like in this labyrinth looking for it and desperate. But but yeah, it hasn't given us, like, we haven't gotten to this place of rest. And to me that sounds like a filmmaker who's making postmodern films, who's really wrestling with postmodernism and dissatisfied with its answers and not content. And so I'm not, um, I don't think it's nihilism. I do think there's cynicism. I do think there is this introspection and doubt at times, in his stuff, but I don't think he ends with saying, and the point is nihilism, and that's the sanctimonious message of the sermon. But I mean, to go disconnect things with the Odyssey, the Odyssey is just it's a incredible story, and it messes with our categories. I think there's folks who would, if you y- if you had never read it and then you heard about it for the first time and didn't know it was a 3,000 year old text, you might accuse it of being postmodern, nonlinear, second guessing. These unreliable, untrustworthy characters are narrating the stories, and the narrator, and there's this self awareness throughout the whole poem. And
Yeah.
so, on one hand, it's like, you read that as a director and you're like, what are you supposed to do with it? Are you really supposed to take that story and make a very linear, clear cut, um, message where the hero develops in the most classical way?
According to Matt Walsh,
Yeah,
you should not use
yeah.
nonlinear
Nonlinear.
storytelling to
Yeah. Whoever thought of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That
Helmer
was
did.
actually something, what was ironic about that was I thought the perfect Nolan adaptation of the Odyssey would be to play on this whole nonlinear like, because it is all stories being told in the
Sure.
past, of the past
Yeah.
until it kinda catches up, but, like, I was like, "Oh, he could have done so much with." I mean, all of his use of time,
Mhm.
he loves to play with
Yeah.
time. It's his I
Yeah.
mean, that
Yep.
was that was my annoyance with Dunkirk was like,
Yeah.
"Dude, just tell a story.
Yeah.
You're just inserting this time
Yeah.
thing that doesn't." I mean,
Tenet is way worse in that respect, so you would.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't mind you doing it, but I don't like it when, and maybe this is some of my, like, I treat World War II probably too is my issue with, Thin Red Line was, like, I don't mind Terrence Malick doing a
Mm,
meditation on life and death and beauty, and, I mean, I love Terrence Malick films.
yeah.
World War II to me is not something that you use
Mm,
to
yeah.
it's like it's sacred, and I get that. Nowadays, World War II is not sacred, and I'm part of the problem, and,
No, I mean,
um,
I agree. I think I agree
it'd be like
there.
taking, like, a Holocaust movie and trying to do, like,
Yeah.
uh, it's like some things you should just, like, honor
Yeah.
it. I think they
Yeah.
should be made movies, and I don't mind, like,
Yeah.
there's stories that should be told. I just thought Dunkirk was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm starting to change I mean, I've heard that, I heard an interview where Quentin Tarantino was saying that he saw it in the theater with British people and they were crying, and I thought, "Okay, maybe I'm missing it. Maybe Nolan told this in a way that people were like,
Okay.
that's it," you know?
Yeah.
So,
I agree that, like, there is some, like, if like, paying respect, and I think that's what folks were looking for in the Odyssey, but I think their idea of the Odyssey is different than what it actually is. Because, I mean, even in there, Odysseus leaves. He doesn't stay in Ithaca. He's I mean, he goes and, yeah, it's the never ending hero. I mean, in some sense of, like, he's not restless per se, but he's not the king that has the happily ever after. He does have more journeys, and that's in the text. And
yeah,
the oh gosh, I just lost it. But it's like, when you're a Nolan and you're already fascinated with these themes, I think if you pick up on, it's kind of hard to ignore and then say, actually, I'm going to make this more of a hero's journey. But there's so much there that seems ripe for his spin and twist that I
yeah.
think. allows him where I'm like, okay, I could see why you're doing that, and it doesn't actually seem too forced to me. That's my
Yeah.
read. I don't think it's
Yeah.
too ideological. I think a lot of it just comes down to some creative um, decisions, and but he's like, does he have like this exact philosophy and message he's trying to
Right.
relay and communicate? I kind of doubt it. I mean, as a film, it's worth, as all his films are, to be picked apart and you
Sure.
know crit- criticized as films, but as the message, or like, is he because it seems to me he does pay respect to the characters in his way, in his
Yeah,
spin,
no, absolutely. Yeah.
and
No,
it's not too out of left field.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no,
yeah,
I was saying I thought I wish he had gone deeper into untrusted narrators, maybe even retelling the same story a couple times with different, like he does that sometimes where you have a I thought there was more he could have done with like, well, Menelaus or what
yeah,
John Bernthal's his
hmm
retelling of the horse is different than this guy's retelling it. There's a I thought I was like, man, I wish he had played more on that.
that would be
Um,
interesting.
and because that was like his wheelhouse. But he
Yeah,
was trying to tell a different story, which is totally um fine. So as we kind
yeah,
of what if we were caps, I mean, I love that you said that Nolan, because I'm not I never want I don't really care to say, oh, Nolan's theology is wrong or something. I'm just interested in what his point of view is, what his um view, because something about it's captivating with people, and including me. I mean, I like his
hmm
movies. I find him. I mean, I think he is uh, so technique driven that
yeah,
it. Uh, I mean, Roger Scruton. I talked about this in my other video. Like Roger Scruton described Thomas Kincaid as all technique with nothing to say,
mm,
and I think Nolan gets to me really close to that because his technique is brilliant. It's beautiful. It's enjoyable. I mean, the when he plucks the bow,
yeah,
I'm just like,
sure,
that is awesome. And the
yeah,
movie, and again, when you're watching it with community, with the people, everyone reacts, everyone responds. But I find ultimately his movies to me ring like he really doesn't have much to say about the world
mm,
because he doesn't know. I mean, it's all kind of um but maybe there's a hope. Maybe I'm casting that all negatively when you're kind of saying he ends his movies on these kind of upticks of hope, of further exploration, of further something else out there. Except Dark Knight, I feel like Dark Knight ends actually uh, embracing um, the scapegoat in a very cynical, like
yeah. This
the
is about
people
it.
can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
The myth is the most important thing,
And that's
and
what
that.
but all his prior films too is like that. The Prestige, just like the audience knows this isn't real, but they would prefer to be to s
Mm,
they want the illusion. So
yeah,
give it,
yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I think that's there, but I don't think it is clearly matter of fact all nihilism all the way through, right? So he does, in regards to him having being only technique without much substance to say about the human condition, he does start his stories with structure only. So he doesn't start writing characters. He doesn't start world building and that kind of a thing. He starts literally with like a structure, a geometric kind of structure of a story. And
Mm,
he said that's how he does all his films, and he always has. So he does start with structure first, and he finds a pattern of which, if I like this pattern, if this is the thing that seems exciting and makes sense, he's going to stick to it. just because of the shape and pattern and structure of the story rather than the the message, or rather either than the characters themselves. So I think that's probably not an unfair thing to say. At the same time, I do find what his characters go through to be um, compelling, as they, even starting with Memento, the way Leonard wrestles with guilt, the way
Mhm.
all his characters wrestle with guilt, loss, but also sacrifice and courage. Dunkirk, like the the selfless courage that's on display there. So I do find, e- even in the structure the technical structure, there still seems to be this thing that's connecting with audiences that does seem to
Sure.
be deep enough to be like, this is a place where these things can be on display. And I do think those things are powerful. And I agree with you in the sense of like, that is different from like a highly masterful like writer of dialogue and character development in their words, and as they grow. I think those things are different, but I still think it's compelling. So one last thing I find interesting is even though his characters there and the ends of the films don't, the resolution isn't always there in the clearest, most peaceful terms of them finding rest, and you're on the edge, wondering what's next for them. Um, it does seem that, again, I don't know how conscious he is in making this. It does seem like, um, even though his characters are unresolved, um, something else is, and it's often like the law. Like the law has to be fulfilled
Yeah.
at the cost of the characters, or the cost of, their. I think that's fascinating. In the Dark Knight, the scapegoat thing isn't a good thing, but this kind of law, this law of like what the image of what the hope that the populace and the people need to have, it has to be fulfilled in some way, and so it's going to be God. It's going to be sought after to our detriment and to our sacrifice. Odysseus, it's kind of the same thing in the sense of, yeah, he goes out and his son takes the throne at Ithaca, but the law must be satisfied, and the resolution, I guess, is in that keep keeping of these external things, these
Yeah. Yeah.
laws, and so I don't know if that's good or bad, or but I find it interesting, and I feel like those are the things. Like, if I find it interesting that Nolan is interested by those types of themes,
Yeah.
and that they keep kind of coming up and again, in his films. So anyway, I can't wait, I guess, for his next event of a film.
Yeah.
Some people are speculating it'll be Moby Dick, but I don't know. I kind of doubt that. But anyway, it'll be fun.
I'm reading it right now.
Yo,
I'm ready for the structure. I please do not do Moby Dick, Christopher Nolan, please. I mean, I actually think it'd be cool if you had like one story and every single movie, studio said like we're all gonna get a different director to do this story and just see,
wow, how about
you
that?
know, I mean, what if you did have like Nolan, Terrence Malick,
Tarantino. Tar-
Tarantino, J.J. Abrams,
oh
do
God,
Moby Dick.
yeah.
I think there would be people that do it more straight, Nolan probably would not be, but Nolan, I mean, I think his attention to the actual craft of movie making, of filmmaking, of his camera work, all of that is actually very important and really good and really beautiful, and it makes for a compelling, you know, viewing experience. I think it was really interesting at the end of the Odyssey that it's and theologically, um, I found it to be kind of to me it felt kind of Lutheran, and it's
Yeah.
like the one who has if the only person who can drive out the suitors is the one who has already broken the law, who has already become sin, right?
Mm.
That
Yeah.
as he and he's the only one who's not afraid to break Zeus's law because he's already broken it and he's already caused
Yeah.
um
He's
and that
dealt with the
and that
consequence.
yeah, because he no longer needs a righteousness of his own, he's actually free from the law. And he's free to act in actual love. I mean, not love towards suitors, but to do good works, driving these enemies out. That the only person who can I mean, everybody else is kinda
Yeah.
handheld by their own need to be righteous. Telemachus and, everybody can't do what needs to be done. Now some of it's like,
Mm.
and that's where I thought the storytelling got a little it's like, can Telemachus not throw them out because he's not physically able to throw them out, which that seems likely, or because he's not allowed to throw them out because of Zeus's law.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but him being the lawbreaker, um, allows him the freedom to do what needs to be done, and I think there's something, Luther talks about how Jesus became sin, he became the sinner,
Mm.
he was the adulterer David, he was
Mm.
the doubter, Thomas,
Yeah.
he was uh, rejecter Peter, all of these things, like he is the one sinner in history. Um, and that because of that, he's free from the law. And therefore he can give all the freedom to everyone else from the law. Because the law's already done its work. It's
Yeah.
already it's already condemned him. And so I thought that was a really interesting, you know, if Memento is kind of like guilt freezes you, um, uh, this felt like guilt freeze you, you know,
Mm.
like freeze you to act. So, um, well, yeah, whenever Moby Dick or I saw somebody else say that he should do Lewis and Clark or something like, and I thought that would kind of be cool. I don't know. That'd be interesting. But whenever the next one comes out, we'll definitely be back to talk again. This is not a film podcast yet, but I do like talking movies, and so maybe we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. We'll be
I
there.
think Terrence Malick is doing a movie on Jesus, so that'll definitely need to be uh, discussed. Are you a big Malick fan?
I you know what? I've only seen one of his films, and I have just from
Which
that.
one?
Um, is it A Quiet Life? Or the
Yeah, Hidden Life.
Hidden Life? Yeah, incredible. So eminent,
Absolutely.
just t- endless respect for him.
Yeah, yeah,
But also, I feel like I can do those maybe one of them a year.
yeah,
The emotional weight of it all.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, but that would be worth talking about as well.
Well, where can people find you and your work and the things you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, follow Sola Media on YouTube, on social ch- channels if you want to see kind of my thoughts that come out via other people and other podcasts and things. That's the best place. You can find me on Twitter as well if you care to hear my yammerings about the Odyssey and well, whatever else is going on. But yeah, those are the best places. But yeah, thanks for allowing me to come on, disagree, and have a more
That's
polite
awesome.
debate here. It was fun. Thanks, Jared.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Caleb.
All right, man.